today's interview. I am so excited to be interviewing a friend of mine that I've gotten to know over the past, say, 8 months or so. She is a wonderful vocal coach and she applies uh, vocal physiology in her practice. And she's also a fabulous singer and a good friend, and also another person who has been healing her body using some of the principles laid out by medical medium. And, so we're going to get to it. Welcome,
Well, first of
welcome.
all, thank you, Kathy, for having me. This is really cool, and I'm excited to be here. I'm Julia Döbele. I live and work in Germany, in south of Germany, in Stuttgart, Germany. It's where Porsches and Mercedes are situated for the car fans. Um, and my occupation is I'm a vocal coach. I'm a singer, and sort of what I specialize in is applied vocal physiology. And so, yeah, that's sort of how Kathy and I met.
Yes, you helped me tremendously in understanding what I had going on in there. So for those of you who don't know, I had lost my ability to really speak clearly and sing um, due to some neurological issues that were going on. So it completely made a dysfunction happening in my vocal cords. So anyway, we did several sessions together, and she helped me to figure out what I was doing to try and compensate. I had developed a lot of bad habits in trying to compensate for the neurological weirdness that was going on, and it helped me like unpack those. All of our work together really helped me understand that I just needed to let it happen. And it was so healing because also, well, you're just such a wonderful healer by nature too. I don't know, you didn't put that into your description, but um, you have a real knack for kind of linking up with people and getting a feel for where they are in their day and their life, their emotional state, and calming, calming us both down, and um, then sort of unpacking what's going on. So it was
Yeah.
some pretty profound
Okay.
work. I felt really great about it.
Thank you so much, but I couldn't have done it without you. You were such a good student, and you know your experience helped a lot, and your open mindset. So I can never do anything without the person in front of me who
Sure, sure. It's a team.
helps me along the way, you know. So that
Mhm.
was, I'm just really thrilled to hear your voice now. It's like
Yay.
a whole nother you.
It
It's
well,
amazing.
I wasn't myself.
Um, those of you who follow know I am a medical medium enthusiast. So I wanted to reveal maybe some of the advantages that following this lifestyle has.
I just
Yes.
couldn't communicate. I couldn't express myself. It was such a trying time. And it was not just emotionally upsetting, of course, being a singer, having that inability to do what you do, but on a very basic human level, I couldn't just express myself, or the simplest tasks were very overwhelming to me. Like going to Walmart and having to speak to the customer service person was very traumatic because they wouldn't be able to hear me, and I would have to exert myself to try and get them to understand me. And it would send me into like a spiral, like emotionally. And um anyway, so praise the Lord. I am so grateful that my voice has returned, and it is a testament to these healing modalities, the medical medium protocols. They work if you follow them. They don't work overnight. I waited 2.5 years for my voice to return. So it was not overnight. And there were a lot of moments when I was like, had to kind of accept that maybe that was just going to be the way it was. And,
Mm.
but somewhere inside, I just knew that it was going to work. I knew it from the start too. It's funny because even though when there was no outward proof whatsoever, I was like, nope, this is my path. And other people would be like, well, have you tried this and this and this and this? And I would be like, well, uh, I might try that later, but for
Mhm.
now, I'm sticking the course, and I didn't want to muddy up my process by introducing a bunch of other weird stuff that wasn't in the medical medium protocols, because then it's all a big mess, and you don't know what's working, what's not working, and you can't even
Right.
tell.
Right.
So anyway, enough about me. I guess I started
No,
your
but
interview off with my story, but I guess it's
all good.
relevant.
It's just, it is very thrilling. It's like, I'm actually having like little bit of tears here going on
Oh.
because, the first time I heard you on that little video you made, I was like, I sat in front of my computer and I was like, wow, holy shit, beat this out.
No, of
This is
course.
like
No,
big, and I was like, oh my God, something big happened. And
it was.
yeah, and it was, and for me as someone who was working with you, I was like, wow, this was sort of, because I didn't know your voice before. I met
No,
you like with a voice that wasn't yours. And so I was like, I always have to sort of feel my way through it, what the voice could be. So it's
right.
like I have to like see what could be behind all that's there right now.
Hmm.
And so I was like, yeah, it's just a big, it's like a revealing party of a person to see that happen. It's just huge. So I totally
Yes.
get that.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all of your help and guidance. And you had faith too. I know
Oh
we
yeah.
had a lot of conversations about it, and you were just like, it's coming. You just
Hmm.
gotta let it come. Oh, I want to tell the story of how we met though, because
Oh
that
yes.
is,
Hmm.
it's a pretty cool story. Um, So I am part of a paid membership for a medical medium group, and we have these weekly calls or whatever that are every week. And so I'm on the call, and all of a sudden I see Julia type in some things about the vagus nerve and relating to vocal things. And I'm like, what? Because this, what my affliction was so unusual and not many, there's not much written about it in the books.
Hmm.
There's like a couple of blurbs
Hmm.
in uh like I think the original medical medium book has a little blurb about vocal weakness is what he calls it.
Hmm.
And so it wasn't like total dysfunction, which is what I had been experiencing, but he just said it's, vagus nerve related, and Epstein-Barr virus and metals play a part in that and so forth. So in all of my correspondence with anybody who's trying these modalities, I've only come across one other person that was experiencing vocal problems and doing medical medium.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
um, we kind of corresponded here and there, would check in with each other and so forth. Anyway, he's from Germany too, as a matter of fact.
Oh, that'd be
Um,
interesting. Hmm.
yeah. Anyway, so when she piped up, I was like, so I started instantly. I said, I'm gonna message you outside of this. And so somehow how did I do that? I saw your name, and I guess I just looked you up on Facebook and it's messaged
Yeah,
you.
I think we were like, you right away you asked for a Facebook friendship, and so I befriended you, and then we could write on Facebook. Yeah. That's
Yes.
how it was. Yeah.
So this is all very lovely story, et cetera, et cetera. But you weren't supposed to be in that membership. You weren't a paid
No.
member of that
No.
meeting. That is the part that I say the angels were conspiring for me to work with you and meet you. Um, so you had gotten an email, or how did that work? How did you wind up
Yeah,
there?
I have like, I get the newsletter from her, and one day I suddenly got this like newsletter that looked a little bit different, and I got another one, and I looked at it closer, and I was like, oh, this is an invite for one of those groups. And I was like, but did I accidentally sign up? And I'm like, I checked everything, and I was like, I know I didn't. So I was like, oh, well, then, I'm just going to attend because maybe you learned something. And so I went in there, and of course, I had lots of vocal question because that's what I do for a living.
Hmm.
And so I thought, I, I'll just ask. And I asked, and of course, it was like, oh, this is too specific. We can't, go there. And I was like, oh, not again. It's always too specific.
Yeah.
But then you wrote something to me, and I was like, oh, there's another person who has these questions. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay. And so fairly soon, I actually got out of that call because I noticed that I didn't understand what they were referring to because they were talking
Hmm.
about other calls. And I was like
Sure.
sitting there, and I was like, okay, now I'm lost, so I'm just going to leave. But we were already Facebook friends. So
Yeah. So I think it was meant to be. So thank you, angels, for helping me out with that one.
that was pretty magic. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we have discussed all about me. And now let's turn the focus to you. Tell me a little bit about your history, what brought you to medical medium, all that good stuff.
Okay, I'll try to put it sort of in a nutshell. It's been like over 15 years that I had like all sorts of really like weird symptoms that I most of the time didn't connect to each other. Um, and I would say it actually started off with my own vocal sort of travels, experiences, having vocal dysfunction as a singer and having to stop to sing. And doctors were just, you have to pause basically indefinitely because no one could help me. So that was like the first time I mean, like having to stop your work is big. So I sort of started looking all over the place and just trying to figure out what could be a good place. And then I found the work I actually do now, which is applied vocal physiology. It's Lichtenberger Institut. It's close to Darmstadt, also in the south of Germany, or more to the mid, but whatever, somewhere down there. And I had been there as a student in college, but I had forgotten about it. But at the moment I knew, now the doctors are telling me you can't sing anymore, and everything's it's really dangerous and stuff. I didn't know a lot about vocal physiology, so I went to the institute and took like one class after the other and did a lot of workshops. And that was sort of my start, but I also had to like I knew I had to work on like psychological stuff, like my mental health, and just clean up sort of my whole package that I had brought, which was quite something. And on the side, I had always these physical bodily issues that were like no doctor could find any solutions. And I'd lived with them basically all my life, but with that experience, it sort of got a little bit worse, but I still didn't take it as serious because, I could sort of still manage. And um, cutting it short, in 2016, I had a really bad car accident with friends in the US, actually, visiting friends. And they didn't diagnose brain hemorrhage with me. So I just I went under the radar. And for many reasons, probably also angel related, I survived this. I survived flying back home. But what happened was that a few of the, especially like fatigue concerned symptoms and like brain fog and body aches that were terrible, they had been there, but they hadn't been as strong, of course, as when the accident happened. So when the accident happened, of course, my body was basically, trying to survive, and it was panic mode totally. And when I arrived in Germany, I was still a bit in panic mode, and so I sort of just tried to get out of there somehow, and I managed to, and it was really helpful because I know a lot about physiology, and so I could help myself. But around that time in 2016, actually Anthony William came across the first time. And I heard it in one of those thyroid groups on Facebook because I have thyroid conditions also, like, or used to actually have. And first I thought, well, maybe this is a bit iffy because I had spent so much money and so much effort and trying to get healthy. And even though we're the lucky ones here, we have universal health care. Of course, that doesn't pay everything. And also, if you have sicknesses that doctors can't define, or that they take a very long time to define, like with me, you won't get any help. So I actually went to like faraway cities, and I went even to Holland to try to get help out of the country, basically, and nothing helped. So I had also like searched for alternative ways to get help, and nothing really sort of stuck, and nothing really helped. And so at that time, I was struggling like really, really badly because of my head. I sort of just survived for a little bit, but then in 2017, a year later, I it came across again and again. And then I think it was 18, the beginning of 18, January or something, I changed doctors, and I went to a doctor who um was again in a very different city. And in the second meeting we had, he said, "You know what? I just was on this bike ride, and I had this book with me, and the author is Anthony William, and it's a big blue book." And I was like, "Yeah, I have this at home, but I hadn't dared to read it yet." And he was like, "What really struck me, this guy has no medical education whatsoever, but what he writes is very on point from a medical point of view. This could be interesting." And he said, I really he read it like, like you read like a good memoir or something. And I was like, okay, well, he's a doctor. He's also an alternative doctor, but he studied medicine. So I was like, okay, maybe I don't have to be so afraid of like some scam. So I went home and I read this book all at once. And I think I cried through the first 30 pages because I was like seeing myself in the book, and suddenly someone had explanations that made sense and I could understand myself. So, what I was actually diagnosed with, besides having a thyroid condition, was MECFS, which is chronic fatigue syndrome. So, I had been, in the summer of 2018, I had been um, basically not being able to work anymore for like maximum three hours a day, sort of, which was really tough because I'm self-employed and blah blah blah. And but then I started with a medical medium, and things changed fairly fast. But I don't want to take all the questions.
Oh, yes. No, please
You want me
continue.
to continue?
Oh, yes. This
Okay,
is
okay,
riveting. I'm loving it.
okay. So, so I think I remember I had like I was really like on a bodily and psychological low in my life because, I hadn't been able to sing for a long time because I didn't have just the bodily endurance to do that job. It's very stressful. That, and there's a lot of um, you have to. I mean, you just have to be good. There's no way of like
Phoning it in.
flaking out. There's no
Yes.
flaking possibility. So you just have to perform. And so I had not been doing that for a long time, which really hurt my heart. But I couldn't because my body wouldn't let me do it. So I was like, I was depressed on so many levels. And this doctor, he told me, he was the first one. He said, "Well, I don't think you have a depression. You're just sad." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, you're a woman in your mid 40s and you can't do the job you love. You can't even do the job that you like teaching, but he's like, you can hardly like do what you want to do. You can't see friends. Anyone would be sad." I'm like, "Thank you, thank you. That's so true. I'm just, I don't have a classical depression. This is really sucky, so, and,
Right.
and so I basically, the doctor told me to read the book, and I went home and I had it already, so I read it, and I started like pretty fast on like leaving out all the no foods, and because I have to add, as singers, we do a lot of times try out all sorts of things, new lifestyles, what we can do with your body. And since I've been basically a sick dumpling since I was a little girl, um, I had done so many food and lifestyle changes. It's not even funny. So starting with medical medium, I didn't have to like start from total scratch. I could sort of, I knew certain foods were bad already, and so I just had to like not eat them anymore.
Right. Like, what
um
did you already know? What did you already figured out?
Actually, eggs. And I was a bit stubborn and I still ate eggs. So that was the first thing I left out. And it was amazing because I got my strength back. So I wasn't as tired anymore, which makes a lot of sense. I also have strep. So,
Mhm.
strep and eggs and it will go. And of course, I hadn't eaten dairy anymore. So I didn't have to sort of watch that much. I didn't make any excuses for like different kind of like goat dairy or something anymore. I hadn't eaten gluten anymore for a long time, since probably 2 or 3 years, because of my Hashimoto's, my thyroid disease.
So
And
you already had that piece figured out that gluten
right,
was
that was
bad for
already
that.
there, but it wasn't really, the other things were really important. I had for one, I had been on how does it call it? It's I don't even want to say his name again because it's not really worth looking it up. But I was on a diet from a doctor who meant really well, where you actually eat quite a bit of protein, which was new to my life. And that was also for me a reason why I changed easier, because I come from like from a family where meat was like very seldomly served, and my mom was very health conscious, like very typical for the 80s, especially where I grew up in Stuttgart. So and so food was like had always been like a big thing in my life. But so I started with that protein thing. I started, for instance, eating what's it called, pork, for a long, like I hadn't been eating that for a long time. So I stopped that with Anthony and William, of course, which wasn't hard for me because I had not been eating pork from the age 12 to like nearly 30, because that's just how I grew up. Because
Wow,
my
how
parents,
fortunate for you
how
that you
fortunate,
dodged
exactly, because
that.
I, yes. And it was weird because I sort of learned that the short time before Anthony, I learned how tasty it can be. It's like crazy. So I was like, I shouldn't have done that. But anyway, what else? Soy, I had reduced soy because I just knew that it didn't feel good. But back to the protein, I had to stop eating protein because I just felt it was, even if it was protein from lentils and stuff, it was sort of putting weight on my mobility. I wasn't putting weight on. It was just, it sort of got me stuck, sort of, and made me heavy in a, the way I felt. And I didn't like that. And I remember having a couple of days where I craved fruits like crazy, like before even finishing the book. And I was just sat there and I was like, this is a sign. I have to. So I went out and I got like this huge bunch of fruits, and I made a big fruit salad. And I think I had fruit salad for like dinner for the next 3 days. And I was just happy. And then I read
Good.
this, the fruit fear stuff in Anthony William. I'm like, oh, that's what
Yep.
you wanted fruit because your body needed fruit, right? And so I sort of eased everything in, but what I started pretty fast was celery juice, and that was um, amazing.
How much did you start with?
Half a liter, which is, what is it, 16 ounces.
You
Like
started right off
I
the
know
bat?
I started big because I was like, oh well, I'm going to do this.
That's funny,
I'm
yes.
not like this with everything. I was slow with everything else, but with that I just started.
Did
And
you have any reactions or was it?
oh yeah, not getting from off the bathroom for a long time
Yeah.
that day. Yeah. But it was since I had like so many issues with digestion, and I knew this was sort of good that stuff was leaving my body
Right.
for
Yes, yes,
some
yes.
reason. You know,
Yeah.
I was like I just and also I sort of just the words in that book made me trust.
Yes.
It was it wasn't funny enough. It wasn't Anthony himself that made me trust, because it's like, you know how cultures really are different, and like he is such a, you know, he's such a Californian guy. It's like he's fast and all the time.
Hmm.
And and like here in Germany at least, someone like that with like a background like that, with like input from spirit, and you know, it's like that's
Sure.
major, would never be like that ever. They'd be like very calm and solemn and serious, you know? So that's just,
Ah,
I
a
know. So
cultural difference. So interesting.
totally, totally. So first I was like, well, what is this? Is he trying to sell me something, you know?
Right.
Right. So I learned by sort of reading the book and trying out while I was reading. And the celery juice basically did wonders for me, and still does, because I took it and I sort of had this latent, I would call it a latent depression, because I I didn't have like, as besides all my bodily stupid things going on, I didn't have like major reasons to be sad. And I wasn't really sad. I was like, I had a damper on my soul. I can't describe it differently. And I used to have this kind of symptom a lot. And when I took celery juice for the first time, it was gone after 20 minutes after drinking it.
Wow.
It was like a light went on in my dark place, and it was like I saw the world again. I remember doing a Facebook post actually telling people that celery juice is the shit, and
I
people were
love
of
it.
course laughing really hard, you know, and I'm like, you have
Sure.
to try this, you have to try this. This
It's
is
like
crazy.
figuratively and literally, it will make you.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
it
So,
will also like do so much more. So that's
oh,
so awesome. So when you said, okay, so initially it wasn't Anthony William that like made you trust him initially. You
mhm.
weren't sure. Was it the fact that the protocols just worked?
I had a
Did you hear other stories, healing stories, or how did that work for you?
Well, I pretty because I work with Facebook a lot, so I would go into a medical medium group and I read a lot of stuff, and I you know, I tried to learn from other people's mistakes, and you know, share and stuff. So but actually reading the book and understanding, or actually sitting there and finally having someone basically explain to me what was happening to me for the last over 15 years, or maybe even, you know, there was like situations where he would describe something in the book and I said, wow, I had this as a child always, so I've been having this kind of bug with me probably since I'm a little kid, and it's just,
Totally.
you know, changed. And so actually the words in the book touched me on a level that was emotional and intellectual, because I could finally understand what was going on, and it made so much sense that I'm a very like intellectual oriented person also. So sort of my like my backup checkup system. So when it made sense to me, I was like, I'm just going to try this, because it's, you know, it's all that's going to happen is it's not going to be able to change something, but if it does, you know, I just give it a chance. So but I did have like the amount of making sense was so big that it actually, you know, it's still carrying me because it makes so much sense. Like,
I totally agree. I think it just like it seems almost obvious once you know what it is.
mhm,
It's like,
mhm,
okay, so of course these viruses and pathogens and metals and toxins and things are polluting our body to cause it to dysfunction.
mhm,
Why would we think that it's suddenly our body attacking itself? Or,
right.
I mean, it's just so interesting how we can be conditioned to just accept, well, that's the theory and that's what
Yeah.
it is, even though when you really stop to think about it, it doesn't make sense. But
And
the
also, I mean, really good doctors, you know that those are theories, which also
right.
then they know it's a theory, it's not proven fact.
But
And I
they say it
remember,
is, though. They spout it off to their patients as if it is proven and it is like a solid.
and then there are those, I mean, I did a lot, I mean, those 15 years and all my life, I always tried to get like good doctors, which there are good doctors. And interesting enough, you know, the better a doctor, the more he will just say sometimes, you know, we don't really know anything about this. Like with this chronic fatigue syndrome, they don't know anything. They have no clue. That's why they couldn't help me, and why they told me in 2018 when I was 45. That's way too young that I should prepare to go, you know, be cared for in a home.
Right. And
It's like,
I should
are you
retract
serious?
my former statement in the fact that I I'm not blaming the doctors because they're
Hmm.
just doing what they're taught in
Hmm.
medical school. They're just saying what they've learned. So
Hmm.
it's not their fault. It's, I guess the bottom line for me is that we just need to take our power back instead of
Oh, about
giving it
time.
away.
Yeah.
That's the key. And that's what I want everybody to take away from this is that
Hmm.
just trust your own body. Is It's a miracle you're here. I mean, think of all the functions it does every day without
Hmm.
any help from us whatsoever. It knows what it's doing. It's
Hmm.
I just, it's interesting. I had a functional neurologist that had some of the pieces figured out.
Hmm.
He knew that my neurological stuff was viral.
Hmm.
He knew it was Epstein-Barr, and he knew to even prescribe lysine to
Hmm.
to combat it,
Yeah.
but he didn't quite have the other components of, eliminating the fats and the
Hmm.
all of the other no
Yeah.
foods that feed the viruses. He just
Hmm.
didn't quite know all of that. But I really, now that I can speak and communicate in a more effective way,
Hmm.
I really, it's on my to-do list to go over there with the book and be like,
Oh,
you were
wow.
so amazing and you were so on to something here, but please, I'm begging you to read this and tell me what you think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'll be excited to hear what happens after this because after not even three-fourths of a year doing Anthony William protocols, and I didn't do the 28 day cleanse ever. All I did was celery juice, leave out the no foods, and I started the heavy metal detox smoothie late actually because I don't know, it stressed me out to have to figure out where to get all that stuff that I didn't have in my
sure.
life
Well,
yet. So,
especially, yeah, out of the US, it's even more complex.
oh yeah, we were really, I mean, that's the thing, Germans are very thorough. So the German group that is sort of the big Anthony William group, it's led by two people who are super thorough, and they have very strict regiment in the group, which makes it very clear to find good answers. You know, which is good because you know how sometimes people just will tell anything and it's not Anthony William related. So they're
Right.
very strict about that. So it was fairly easy with that guidance to sort of start off because you can just do this group search and use the material that they give for free and whatnot and read the books. So um, that was good. It was just they even have like a supplement list that is sort of checked with Anthony William. They actually know him in person and that went visit him 2019 and they put it online so everyone in Germany, Switzerland and Austria can sort of know where to get their stuff from. I
Wow, that's a
know.
very good resource.
So German. It's like
Yeah, Hey, you got to take that. That is like a
Yes.
very big positive. So I would be
Absolutely. So yeah, that group is just worth a lot. It does a lot of
helped
good
you
for.
along
Oh
the
yeah,
way.
and so
Yes.
many other people. Yeah. So yeah, but I totally lost train of thought. Where were
Well, you
we?
had been about three-quarters of a year.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
No,
So that I'll start again. So 3/4 of a year I'd been on Anthony William, and I had an appointment with my thyroid doctor, and she was I had looked out for her for a long time because I'd been diagnosed with this thyroid thing 12, 13 years, something like that.
had you taken medication for it?
I had, but I'd already like got rid of it myself with the Anthony William book, but I only took very small doses, so it was fairly easy actually. And but the funny thing was at the doctor's office, I was lying there and she was, sonographing my thyroid, and she was certainly being like, she was a very like put together person, and suddenly she was like, Why are you here? What what was your condition again?" And I'm like, um Hashimoto's. I have two cold knots. You should be, that's why I'm here, monitoring those knots. And she's like, this is so weird, I can't find anything. Are you sure you're a Hashimoto patient? And I'm like, um
Amazing.
um, just look in the file, just check the last photograph you took. And so she would start measuring and on the computer, and she was very like, she was taken aghast. It was just like she didn't know what was going on. And then she said, "What did you change?" And I said, "I'm eating differently. I told you before. It's Anthony William. I'm eating differently." Huh. She was just like, "Oh, this sometimes happens. Sometimes, you know, sudden remissions happen. That's, yeah, the medicine calls that a sudden remission. Huh, that's interesting." And she just went out of the room and sort of took notes. And I was like, dude, you should ask me now what exactly you did. And I was like, do you want me to tell you exactly what I did? And she's like, oh no, that's it's a sudden remission. I think I took her so much by surprise that she was just like, well, congratulations, you don't have Hashimoto's anymore.
Wow. See that to me, I that's an autopilot response, I think.
And I mean, because I liked her, because yeah, it took a long time to find her. She was very open to all my crazy things that I would do. um,
Nice.
I think she was just, it was like something that shouldn't be happening is happening. It's like a wonder situation, like
Sure,
a
like a
miracle.
miracle. Hmm.
And then she being like a scientist, she can't like go there. I think that's sort of what happened, because,
Yep.
and I know it's not helpful because then other people don't get it. So to her, I wouldn't waste the 30 euros on a book because she wouldn't look at it, because she didn't even want to know who was the.
Right. Well, exactly. Well, that's what I thought when I visited my practitioner. I wasn't just going to drop the book off. I was going to have the conversation because I
Mm-hmm.
needed to know if he was willing to read it. Because I'm
Right.
not, I have made the mistake of sending books to people without like seeing if they wanted it or not.
Right.
And I don't think they ever read them.
Yeah, and that's just sad then. But yeah, so I think it's a big, um I don't know. I don't even know what to say to that, because it's so sad, because there's so many people who are still suffering and who could, do something about it. But at the same time, I know, like, I didn't say that before, but I also have, like, in that big backpack I spoke about that I brought from my life.
Yes.
I
Yes.
also have
Enter
like
the
an eating
baggage.
exactly.
Yes.
I also have an eating disorder, and the way I got this eating disorder was amazing, because like, that's even 20 years ago. I had like issues again, and also connected to my digestion. And one of my doctors, who was also an alternative doctor, actually an anthroposophic doctor, Steiner, Rudolf Steiner oriented doctor, and she made me change my diet she made me stop eat normal sugars and fruits and all sorts of weird stuff. So I was basically only eating like stuff that diabetic people would eat.
Um,
And but I couldn't eat any fruits anymore, which was really terrible. And I did that for 2.5 years. One thing is because she told me to, and the other thing was because I really got really bad stomach cramps. And that like one nearly got me into the hospital, like really bad. And
wow.
so
Were you ever diagnosed with any sort of like colitis or
no,
IBS or?
no, they never found anything like that, which is weird. But so I stopped and when I realized at some point I had eaten something that wasn't like, I think I had eaten some gluten and I was okay. It was like a flip, like a something that flipped inside of me, and that's awful. I went to like McDonald's and got like 2 Big Macs and ate them at once,
Mhm.
and that was when my binge eating disorder was born. That was really crazy. And I know now that doctor, she just, I think she could not imagine that any of her patients would actually do what she said, even if it wasn't very thought through at all, and then for such a long time. You're not supposed to do like diets for longer than 6 weeks. Doing like a life change and eating differently, something different, but having like a diet that is like to lose weight or to um, to like just leave let don't eat any gluten more anymore, and not have a concept to it, and really change fundamentals of the way you eat. You
Right.
should not be
Really
doing this.
restrictive diets are,
Very restrictive,
yes.
and that actually makes people have like psychological problems with eating. So I got my binge eating disorder, which of course didn't help in the long run, um, because a doctor thought he would help me but didn't think that I would actually go through with it. So of course, as a singer and someone with health problems, I would always sort of try out everything someone would offer me. And I
Sure.
would believe because I wanted to get better.
Well, that's
So
completely admirable, if you ask me, that you were willing to do the hard work because changing your diet is not easy. And there's
no
an
implicit
emotional
way.
component to food too that is like
Right,
so
right.
hard to untangle.
But the thing is, Anthony William gives us like really basic knowledge about how to change that, what to change, and like even recipes, even though I hardly ever use his recipes, but he even gives us recipes. So
Oh, they're great.
yeah, I always need to add lots more herbs and spices
Me
because
too.
I need it spicy. But that's just like, it's a very holistic way of helping people. But if this doctor, she would all just give me like this piece of paper which had like two sides to it, what I'm not supposed to eat, and no, like that was all. And I had never like, I mean, I grew up eating healthy, whatever that was, what I thought, but um I'd never done like serious diets, or I had no clue about, what would be good or bad for me. So I would just follow what was on that thing, and it was very restrictive
Yes. So how
and
long
didn't
did
have
your
any
eating
options.
disorder last?
Actually, it lasted for a really long time. I got myself to quit it in about maybe like 2013ish around, which was sadly also the time I got so much sicker before my brain hemorrhage. But it popped up again in 2018 because I was in a hospital for quite some time because of my fatigue. And even though they were also specialized on eating disorders, they messed up a lot with me. And I ended up coming home with like a newly refreshed eating disorder, binge eating disorder, and also actually wanting to do Anthony William, which was like really tough on me. So I'm probably one of those people who is not the very strict kind because I couldn't. Like I had to find ways of sort of juggle both. Like,
Yeah. Well, you didn't
no,
want to
if
send
I
yourself back into an eating disorder mindset. I understand that you can't be too hardcore because you can sort of like tip the scale and slip into that territory.
and because in the moment you really, I mean, I was really, it really scared me because the eating sort of mindset is like, um, it's not only self-hurtful, it's also you have no control anymore. It's like you dissociate basically, and then you do stuff that you really regret afterwards, and it's which is eat a lot of food, and
Sure.
it's you know,
I
and
had one
so
too, so I understand where you're
oh
coming
you
from. Mine
yeah,
was
you know that.
like a little shorter,
Mm-hmm.
luckily, but
Okay, wow.
I thought it was interesting that Anthony William does explain that there's heavy metals involved
Mm-hmm.
in some of that, as well as there's also an emotional like component as well, or even I want to say a spiritual
Mm-hmm.
wounding that
Mm-hmm.
you attempt to satisfy. And then of
Absolutely.
course we also know that when you vomit, you release adrenaline, so you sort of get
Yeah.
addicted to that adrenaline rush as well as
Yeah,
the
yeah.
food itself. It's also about that adrenaline rush, and I think
Interesting.
sort of
I never thought that.
self-punishment.
Oh, totally, totally. It's just like the opposite of self-love. The
Hmm.
total opposite of self-love. It's hatred, self-hatred, hatred.
Yep.
And um, and that doesn't have anything to do with eating actually. It
Correct,
has
it's
to do
about
with
control.
hurting
And
yourself.
yes.
To me, at least, that's what it felt like. And yeah, but like figuring out like those things that, like on the other hand, like certain foods, like if I have wheat or dairy products, my body will crave those even more. If I don't have them, of course I'll dream of a sandwich once in a while, but it's not that bad as that's my body sort of making me. And now I know, it's the bugs. They want food, of course. And
Yes.
so
It's
that sort of
amazing how much
helps
control
me.
they have over us.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes. Well, they
Yes.
produce our B12,
Mm-hmm.
and they like produce secrete whatever they secrete, hormones or whatever, to say we want gluten or dairy or whatever they're saying. So we
Yeah.
interpret it as my body wants gluten.
Right, right, right. Which is the least the body wants. Yeah. But
Right.
it's like so I finally, well, it was my way to sort of find out what is the least bad no food I can sort of allow myself to have. And so I have this list of I never eat dairy, I never eat eggs, I never eat gluten, I never eat, well, it's not a no food, but and then again it is. I never eat alcohol, which I'm not drinking for a long time now. I don't ever eat coffee. What was the other thing? Eggs, gluten, dairy. Well, pork, of course. I
Mhm.
never eat pork. But so whenever I have whenever I hit some kind of binge eating moment, I will try to, solve it in a different way, but never eat those foods. And that works because they're just so aggressive to my body. That scares me actually.
Wow. Well, that's good that you found your sort of the line in the sand for you that works. It's workable and doesn't send you
Right,
into a
right.
tailspin. And yeah,
I
good.
I wish I would only crave like really good food, but maybe I will get there. I'll see.
It does happen. I think my cravings are much less than they used to
Mm-hmm.
be.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's funny, I have that sort of similar. I'm off all the no foods, and I have been for a while, and which is
Mm-hmm.
great. Um, but when I fat becomes that Pandora's box for me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because throughout my healing journey, I have attempted to eliminate it or at least keep it really low, because
Yeah.
as we know, it
Right.
sort of impedes the healing process and the detoxification of the liver. It gives the liver some busy work to do to break that fat
Yeah.
down, so it can't do its other jobs, which
Mm-hmm.
part of which is getting rid of those terrible pathogens and acting as part of our immune system, because the liver really ultimately is the one of the initial points of contact where it tries to capture those viruses before those
Yeah,
viruses can go anywhere else.
that's true.
But if it's busy digesting that, big whatever, hunk of vegan cheese or
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
whatever
Mhm.
else.
Mhm.
And again, so I totally relate to that, the whole fat. And then again, my one of my weaknesses is salt too.
Yeah, I have to admit, same here. So it's salt and fat actually, which is yeah, salt. I'm not even close to letting go. I've reduced it, but I'm not there yet.
I
It's
have gone
like,
through periods. It's ebbed and flowed for me. I've taken it out for a period of time, and then,
mm-hmm,
I was like, you do feel deprived, I guess, after
mm-hmm,
a while. You're just like, look, I especially when you're in that healing, like the ebb and flow of it all, because we all know that
mm-hmm,
the healing isn't linear. It's
yeah,
like all over the place. And so especially early on, like you don't feel like maybe you're getting as much traction as you want in your journey. You
mm-hmm,
feel like it's not much is moving. Especially for me, it was always about my voice.
mm-hmm,
I moved needles on my digestive issues and on my sinus and allergies and all that stuff. Like literally got rid of all of my medications, over the counter medications, within two
wonderful.
months. But
Wow.
but the golden chalice for me was getting
Yeah,
that voice back and getting rid of these neurological
of
issues.
course.
So that was like, at times you were just like feeling like you were doing a lot of sacrificing for,
Mm-hmm.
like it wasn't coming quick enough.
Right. And the voice is a toughie because it's neurological. It's and I have it with strep and I have if I I mean, right now there's no productions. We're still in a lockdown in Germany. So, but you know, if I would have another production going on, I would have to go fat free. There's no, I cannot be on fat if I want to sing. It's just not.
Do you find that your strep flares when you're eating more fat?
I don't really have flares. It's probably someone who wouldn't be a singer wouldn't even notice. I
Mhm.
just get hoarse. I
Got
get
it.
hoarse. My tonsils get a little bit agitated, and sometimes they will have inflammation and just strep things, strep related things.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to actually understand that because it wasn't like, you know, I didn't have a cold on my throat or anything. It was just, I was just hoarse. And even doctors, and I know now that all the voice related problems I had in the past were always strep. It was strep. Sometimes it was EBV, but mostly it was strep. And they would always tell me, "You probably don't know how to sing properly. You should try to, you know, not, you know how shitty you feel when you've been like working a lot and then they tell you you don't know how to use your instrument." It's like, that really took a lot of energy from me, actually, that I would have needed to get better. But of course, they didn't know better. But it took me um, actually till 2019 to really understand it. Like I looked into I had a production and it was 10 days till premiere, and I suddenly was getting hoarse, and I was like, shit, this can't be. And it was a stage play, and I was like the lead, and so I panicked and I went home and I was like, you know, suddenly I was like, why don't I look into my throat myself? Took a little light and look in there, and actually my tonsils were thick. They weren't red, but there were what is it called? But it was pus on them. Actually,
Hmm.
they weren't red, but they were thick, and there was pus on them. And I was like, damn, that's strep. And I looked up in the Anthony William books, and I was like, yeah, of course it's strep. And then I looked up what I shouldn't do, and then I read in some, I don't even remember where it was. She said, well, if you don't eat all the strep problematic food, which I wasn't eating anymore, just try leaving out fat. And I did that for, I think, one day, and my voice was back. And 2 days I was like back to ultra normal. And then I ate a piece of dark chocolate because I was defiant. and and I could feel my tonsil get bigger. And I went to the mirror and I looked at it and I put the chocolate back in the box and I gave it to my colleagues and I never touched it till the premiere because yeah, I knew, okay, this is strep. It was like my body telling me what to do.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. But yeah,
Yes.
I think the voice is sort of a very neuralgic point because it's sort of connected to things like strep, which are superficial but still very like tough things. But then at the same time, if you have a vagus issue, holy shit. And I had that too. So I know about that as well. And it's um of course that takes time and also a lot of knowledge. So I'm actually a bit waiting till all the voice professionals sort of want to do Anthony William because we all have these problems, not always in this, this hugeness, but we have them small, and you can't have them small in that job either.
True.
So
Very true. So I got you off track of your like
I'm sorry.
timeline. So no, 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 no. It was totally me leading you down. I will lead you on a tangent like nobody's business. So you're back. Okay, so you got out of the hospital and you had your eating disorder flaring, and you're just sort of starting with medical medium stuff. Is that right?
Exactly. I had tried to sort of keep certain stuff going during the time in the hospital. They were actually, that was one of the things, they weren't as compliant as they had said they were. And so I got back, and I think after a week, I had my first real binge eating attack, um, which was really took me at a surprise. And it was like in the book, like I didn't even notice me going to the store and buying all this nasty food and coming home and basically eating it out of the bag. And after that I was like, holy shit, you're back. This, I didn't even know this could happen. And so I started right away, try to remember how did I get out of it, years ago, which took me some time. But of course, it went much faster because I already knew all the tricks. um, and I had this one big thing is, I think, knowing that leafy greens and celery juice gives you, the salty elements that your body actually needs. And if you eat enough of that, you won't have these huge cravings for chips or something like that.
Yep. Salty
So
stuff. Yes.
that it did really help, but it was a struggle. It was a struggle, but I had to, like, I knew in 2019 I was going to do two projects, so I had to just up my game, and I did, and I could do the projects, and was a happy camper.
How
Um,
far into your journey did your fatigue and all of the other things that were plaguing you kind of start to fade?
um, there's like different levels. I would say the superficial level of fatigue went really fast. Then there's this level of which is central nervous system, like being able to remember things, not having um, like yeah, actually remembering things, which was big with me. That took a bit longer, um, but it's also more subtle. It took about maybe 2 years, um, and it's still a process. And I noticed that, of course, fat plays a big role in it too. I know that the less I eat fat, the more I will feel, but also the faster my brain works, the faster I can understand things again. And for me, sometimes it is hard to distinguish between what happened with a brain hemorrhage and what was my fatigue, because they sort of cross lines a lot of times. Also, like the the actually the brain fog went away basically by taking celery juice. That was
Wow.
Yeah, that I was lucky with that. Not
That's
everyone
amazing.
is.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
still kind of suffer with it a little bit. It ebbs and flows for me, but it's
Maybe
clearing.
that's like it's probably like in a different layer of your nervous system. That's what I'm guessing because
Yep.
I'm still noticing that like sometimes I'll be like, "Oh wow, I didn't have to concentrate as hard," or I didn't, I can just remember. I don't need to write everything down. But of course, I was at a point with my brain hemorrhage, I could not make myself a cup of tea without putting the word tea on a piece of paper and going to the kitchen. But
Wow.
I had a frontal lobe. It was like
An injury.
it was a real injury.
Yes.
So, of course, that sort of intensified everything else in my body as well. And I had a lot of a huge postage use for a long time.
Well, good. I mean,
It
why you got
was
to do what you got to do. And for me,
exactly.
I find if I write stuff down, it saves the anxiety that I
Yes,
won't
also,
remember because
yes.
I do have some general low level anxiety
Mm-hmm.
always
Mm-hmm.
that I am not going to remember what I'm
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be doing, or I'm not going to remember something important.
Yeah.
So I totally relate to that. Um, so you're pretty much feel like you have healed pretty much everything for the most part, with the occasional like visitation from a symptom here or there. Is that what you would?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I do have to watch my eating really close. Like I really have to be low fat and no foods. And what I sometimes have a hard time with is actually making my celery juice in the morning. I have to admit that. Because one of my things with my fatigue is that that's sort of very typical for that kind of fatigue is that I sort of wake up and I'm sleepy till the afternoon and then I wake up. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right.
Because the
It's
adrenaline and the
I was going to
cortisol
say
doesn't.
your adrenal glands are fatigued. So you have adrenal fatigue and probably a neurological fatigue. I have both as
Hmm.
well.
Like the combination. And so to me, that sometimes is a struggle, but I know if I take the celery juice, I'm doing so much better. If I take um, the heavy metal detox smoothie, I will just remember better. it
Yeah.
just, it's just, I can actually notice it. And
Yep.
so it's sort of like a bit of a struggle there. But um, I still have like fatigue as into saying I can't do the kind of way I used to do sports or um, just doing being up and about a lot. I'm not, but I'm just more sensitive now because I know I shouldn't be pushing myself all the time
Right. You're
because then I
smart.
would
You're
be
smart.
pushing. Yeah. So I'm not, sometimes I'm not sure if it's me being just careful to not push my adrenaline, but or me being more sensitive. It's because after the projects I did in 2019, I of course, and I've had forgotten about that because I was so excited of doing projects again. Um, I fell into a big hole because I, of course, being on stage, there's a lot of adrenaline. You can't,
Yes.
it's crazy. So I
Yep.
was like, I just went into a big low. It was really tough, and those lows mostly like show up by having a depression actually. So um yeah, so it's still, it's definitely still a work in progress. I'm not there yet, but I can sort of see, the horizon and I know where it's going. And otherwise I probably wouldn't be doing this anymore because if I wouldn't see that it's working, then I wouldn't be doing it
Oh,
because
yes.
I mean, let's be honest, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of, I mean, it's just getting that food.
Yep. Yes.
Just like food for 3 days is two
A
big
lot.
bags, and I don't
Heavy.
have a car, so it's like,
Wow. That would be. Do you live
well,
on a ground level or do you have to take it upstairs
oh,
too?
I've no four stores.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I walk there or take the bus or whatever, and then it's you have to do something for your food.
Right. Well, I was gonna say you've got to be in pretty good shape hauling all that produce, you
And I
know?
am, and that's one thing is like where I see I'm better, but I have to sort of, yeah, the adrenal part is still like a big thing,
Sure. Well, I don't think that the adrenal glands heal overnight. And this whole thing
sadly.
is and we sort of touched upon your childhood. You've probably had all
Mhm.
of these pathogens or many of them, as well as metals and other toxins that you likely were born with. I know
Mm,
that's the case for me as well.
yeah.
And you figure for me, I'm 54, so I I've heard people use a rough guesstimate to for every year you've been sick, it
Okay.
would be a month of
Oh,
following
interesting.
protocols. So in other words,
Yeah.
so 54 months for me,
Yeah.
which is not, I have to figure
Yeah,
out how
that's
many
not
months I'm on
short.
now.
Wow.
I
Okay.
might be
Interesting.
halfway there. Let's see, 2.5 years. So how many months is that?
Wow.
24, 30. Yeah, so I'm at least over the hump of the middle section there.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still baffled by your vocal change. It's amazing.
Thank you. I
I
know.
wish I could have been in Germany. You say you be a little mouse to watch it while it's going on,
Yeah. Yep. Well, it's funny because when you're touching on some of the protocols, for instance, the heavy metal detox smoothie,
Mm-hmm.
that was one that I couldn't tolerate
Mm-hmm.
fully um, until recently. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that was one of the things that
Ah,
pushed me over the
interesting.
edge. So around Valentine's Day of this year is when I finally
Yeah.
started implementing the full recipe, because always
Oh
before I
wow, I
would
didn't
do
know
like
that.
a little bit
Yeah.
for a period and see. I also couldn't figure out how to do both the heavy metal detox smoothie and lowering my fats. It would make my
Mm-hmm.
neurological stuff go
Mm-hmm.
nuts. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in truth, the smoothie itself always impacted my neurological. Like right after I would
Mm-hmm.
drink it, I would start feeling dizzy and
Wow.
kind of brain fogged, and just early
Wow.
on, like feel the
Mm-hmm.
spasming, like my constant spasm that went from my eye to my hip would
Mm-hmm.
start like going crazy.
Wow.
Um, so I dabbled with it here and there throughout my 2.5 years. I was like, I would try it for a minute, and
Mm-hmm.
then and it also affects my sleep, or did.
Wow. Mm.
I don't know, it might still be. I'm toying with, I'm even still in that tweaking process right now, because so this is day 10 of fat free for me. This
Wow.
little
Congrats.
chance, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've managed to do the full amount of the heavy metal detox smoothie, but my sleep is a little, sleep is always an issue, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
finding myself not getting as deeply into, like, for when I was eating, when I first started doing the heavy metal detox smoothie in February, I was still keeping some fat in. And so
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I had reached sort of like a balance where I would still wake up a lot throughout the night, but I would go back into sort of a deeper sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the past 10 days or so, though, I've been noticing I'm not getting into that deeper sleep cycle. So I think I might do some muscle testing later and like see if my body wants the fat back, or if I can stay fat free. I mean, like,
Yeah.
fat free is such a great goal because we know how much healing can happen. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what's more important. Is it more important to give my liver that break, or is it more important to get into those deep sleep cycles? Anyway,
It's a really good question, and
yeah,
I know that it's really probably, yeah. I would also do some testing because it's probably it's only an individual answer that you can give to
right,
that. There's
exactly,
no other. There's no like answer for everybody because, and some things like I've done fat free and I've done the 369. Um, and I did okay and I felt okay, but I was so happy being able to get fat back in. And then
Hmm.
at some point I read or heard that Anthony said that, eating fat also makes you feel less. So I was like, oh, okay. I get it because, it's a lot right now. So maybe, I just should be dealing with that much right now.
You mean
And
emotionally, right? Emotionally,
emotionally, right.
yeah.
Sorry. And and I'd sort of, gave me that pass a little bit. But I like one thing like I've went through like what I didn't even touch. Like I had weight issues going from like a super small to what I'm now. I don't even know the American, but it's big. I'm a big woman now, and it's like I've changed so much in the last 20 years that some was most of it was on accident actually, and the first time I gained a lot of weight was after gaining my binge eating disorder because of course eating like two Big Macs and two packs of French fries will get you more weight. Most of the people will. I did, and on a regular, and but then a couple of years later, I would just lose all of that again, just out of the blue. And then I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's. So, my body was just like crazy. And then a couple of years later, I started gaining again, and that's also one reason I tried to figure out what's going on with my body because I knew I hadn't changed my eating habits that much that I would gain. I don't like it was a kilo per week, which is a lot. That's like one bag of milk or it's a lot of weight. And so um but of course doctors wouldn't help me unless I was like medically overweight. Just like, guys, I've been walking to you and asking you and asking for help for years now, and now I'm like, I'm officially fat, and you're just telling me to stop eating. It's like, whatever, there's something wrong in my body. I'm not, I'm a good, I'm a healthy eater. I don't eat crap. And so that's one of those things that I'm still struggling with, and I will probably have to stop eating fat altogether to be able to lose that weight. Um,
For me, that's the case. Like when I first
so it
started
is.
my journey,
Mm-hmm.
I cleansed a bunch and was very, very low fat, almost to
Mm-hmm.
a fault, like too much early on because I suffered terribly through my cleanses and
Wow.
such.
Okay.
But I lost a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I got to that point where I'm never like a skinny person usually,
Mm-hmm.
but people were starting to be a little concerned about because I was
Okay.
sickly and was
Mm-hmm.
getting
Mm-hmm.
skinny.
Yeah.
And just those little twig legs looking, you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Like not a
Mm-hmm.
healthy, fit,
Mm-hmm.
lean, skinny. It was skinny,
Mm-hmm.
skinny.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, but we know now, of course, all of this is liver related. All of
Right.
the weight issue is liver related. And if your body is holding on to fat, it is to buffer those toxins and saving. They're trying to. It's trying to save you
Oh
from
yeah.
the detriment that would happen if those toxins got to your heart or your brain or your lungs or whatever.
Right. Right.
So that's the thing I've had to like be and trust me, I felt so ill. I like my weight became the last thing on my mind.
Right. Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny now I'm just starting to think about it and I'm like, I'm able to go fat free and maybe, I could, reduce the weight that I've put on because
Mm-hmm.
of eating more fats over
Mm-hmm.
the past the holidays and
Mm-hmm.
whatever when I was
Mm-hmm.
in sort of that ebb and flow of it. I get more of a in the mood to do more of a strict eating
Mm-hmm.
in the spring and summer
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
because of the weather is so nice and I just love all of the fruits that are in season.
Which is amazing because you're in Florida. I mean,
True.
isn't it like, I mean, compared to here, it's always nice.
Yes, and you have to take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt because truly I am in like this privileged, like
All
warm
good.
vicinity. But even for here, when
Mhm.
we get into the
I
50s
know.
or the 40s, Fahrenheit, um, I I get cold. I'm cold.
Oh yeah.
And of course, part of it's neurological too,
Yeah.
because that intense coldness still even happens to me on a 90-degree day. I will get after my, and it's funny because sometimes I can tell when I'm detoxing now because
Yeah.
I don't really get that cold business like I did in the beginning when I was really sick.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I can tell I'm detoxing quite a bit because I will in the morning time when I'm drinking my celery juice or I drink my
Mhm.
smoothie, then I'm like, I get the heating pad and I'm like, or I have to go sit out in the sun in the
Mhm.
90-degree
Mhm.
sun, to
I
try and warm
know.
up so I can like function again. So
Yeah. I totally get that. Yeah, I'm very on the cold side, and it shows definitely the neurological state, and it's um but it's that part of my bodily situation basically is so normal to me because it's been with me for my whole life. Like,
yep.
and also, like, I remember, like, as a child I grew up in New York City, which is super hot in the summers, and I remember cold situations in the summer. So I was,
Sure.
um which was like when I was living in London, it's like, okay, it's cold there, so you understand. But
Yep.
in New York City in the summer you don't understand anymore because I mean, it's super hot there. And same with Michigan, really hot summers. But I would like, I do the best when it's really, really hot outside. I'm slower, but I will not freeze. But it needs to be like, like Florida in August or July, like really hot. That's
Right.
what it has to be for me not to freeze, which
Yeah,
is
I can
not
totally
normal.
relate to that. It's not normal,
Yeah.
but
No.
it's nice. I feel it kind of fading into the background as far as symptoms
Mm-hmm.
go, and it's so nice because I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I could go into an air conditioned place, a restaurant, or wherever, and
Mm-hmm.
not have to bring a parka with me.
Right.
Because
Actually, this is so funny because I remember, I've actually been to Florida once, and a friend of mine took me there, and I went on the plane because I'm so freezing all the time. So I have these plane mittens. I have these things that go up to my arms here. I have a scarf. I have something around my head. I wear a hoodie, and I have these extra socks on me. So I have, like, I look like coming from the tundra, and we were we were flying from Detroit to, what was it? It wasn't Miami. It was well,
Fort
somewhere
Lauderdale,
close.
yeah,
Yeah. And I was sitting there, and then we got out, and of course I couldn't get all my stuff off. So I was suddenly standing in this, I don't know, July Florida sun with all this attire, and
yep.
and my friend just looked at me and said, "Can I please take a picture right next to the palm, please? Could you?"
Classic.
And he was like, and he's like, the only reason I could be cool because everyone who asked, I just said, "Oh, she's German."
That's hilarious. And you would
And so
expect the
that's
opposite because being German, you would think you could, be like Wim Hof or whatever and go jump in like some freezing water or something, which
well,
is,
maybe there's Germans who can do that, not me.
oh, me neither. That is my worst nightmare. And by the way, it's not recommended if you have adrenal fatigue.
Oh yeah,
So, I mean, we get a hall pass for
yeah.
that one. Thank
I'm
goodness.
actually I'm actually glad because here there's sauna, and taking like these really cold baths after sauna is sort of like a hip thing to do, and I
Mhm.
never liked it. Which now I have, like, I'm not allowed
Scientific
to do
reason,
this.
like,
Yes,
yes, because it's running your adrenaline and it's not
right.
healthy.
But
So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yep.
Um, would you want to talk about a little bit about your spiritual side of your healing journey? Because I know I've experienced some wonderful meditations and things that you have led, and I know that you have really tapped into that side of it. So I would want to hear your take on that.
Um, to me, actually, good that you ask. The angels that Anthony William points out have been a steady companion, or have been steady companions to me since I read about them. And it was before Anthony William, I had already had relationships to angels and sort of had sort of a spiritual contact. And part of it is because my work is so, yeah, you could say intimate with other people's, with other souls. Having respecting the nervous system, because that's what I work with, means respecting how the nervous system works, and that um, asks me to sort of open up and how do I put this? Open up a room for that person, for that nervous system, whatever comes my way, sort of, and sort of just taking it and not judging it. And so that's what I do when I work and I earn my money. And privately, I've always sort of tried to um, excel, or excel is maybe too big of a word, but just get better with my connection to the spiritual world. And um, I had a connection since I'm a little child. I didn't grow up in a family that was very religious or spiritual in any way, but there were always like points around me where I could sort of connect to. And I remember having my first spiritual encounter at probably age 6, 7 in a um, um, Russian Catholic church on Christmas Eve, after getting the communion, which was, they do that with children. So I remember like I went there with my mom and a friend of ours, and I like ran up to them and I said, "Oh, this is like, I feel like I was born new." I didn't understand what they were saying because it was Russian, and it was just a ritual to me. And I said something that was, part of communion, and they were probably pretty much agnostic, or more. um and so they basically laughed about me, and I stood there and I was like, how can you laugh? This was true. So I sort of hid with my spirituality all my life, and but for me it was always something I could count on, and something I could find strength in and help. And so when Anthony came along, it was like after I could put all my skepticism aside, I just sort of dove in. And um, since I couldn't remember a lot of those things, I would just copy those 2 pages, and I still have them right next to my bed. So when I pray at night, I can look up which angel do I want to ask a question, or do I want for help, or maybe sometimes I want to say thank you, and
Yes.
and the ones that I use basically, or I ask for help in the kitchen, are probably the ones that I ask the most. So like the angel of disarmament is like, and I realized recently, or not that recently, I think I had told you before, that the angel of disarmament, of course, she, I'm not always sure if it's they, maybe, let's say they.
I thought Anthony said that all of those angels are women or
Oh, okay,
female.
okay.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they're spiritual entities, even sex, like, or gender doesn't seem like a relevant like
Right, actually.
topic.
Right, right,
But anyway,
right,
sorry,
right.
continue,
So
please.
no problem. And so perfect. And so I started I also sometimes notice negative energy with me or with other people, and of course I had phases where like maybe they would follow me into my bedroom or things like that. And one day I stood there and I was like, well, this is too much. There's some one in my room that doesn't belong here, and I don't want them here.
Mhm.
And I tried to sort of ask them to leave, and nothing would happen. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to ask the angel of disarmament. And it
Oh.
was like magic. And since then, I ask the angel of disarmament, not just for food help, but for, just when disarmament is needed. sometimes,
That's
it's just like a it's I used to work a lot with Archangel Michael before I got to know Anthony William, and it always was didn't feel that like I felt a bit bad because I knew Archangel Michael probably has a lot to do. So I was like, but I still had like this really close connection. So I would just do it. But now having like these, knowing about those other angels that Anthony like showed us, um, it sort of makes, how do I put this? Asking a lot easier, and it makes sort of getting to know what you actually want to ask. To me, it makes it easier for me. And I've found out that like a lot of times I will sit there and I will look at their names and I will, ask myself, who's the right one to ask? Because sometimes I'll be like, an angel of knowledge, could you help me know which would be the right angel to ask this problem? And um, even though I do it always out loud, I totally notice that it has, or a big component of it is how much is my sort of um, heart brain connection working the moment I ask the question or I ask for help. If I'm doing it too like on the side, of course I will not get like a proper answer. You know what I mean?
yes.
Because it's like it's also a question of respect, sort of. So um it's hard for me to understand, but there's like been so many points, like for my binge eating, for me, just having a hard time like getting into no foods, or getting them out, remembering certain things, or doing the protocols. I always asked for help with the angels, because it seemed very natural to me. It seemed very logical to me because I'd been working with angels for a very long time. And I know a lot of people have a hard time with that, but I don't at all. And I tend to not like sort of flaunt that. So this will be like a new, probably a lot of people will think, oh, I didn't know she had this, because I think a lot of people think of me as this, this woman who does this scientific work and she helps other people, and then she's, maybe I'm a queer intersectional feminist too. So it's like, but I'm like everyone. I'm not. You can't put me in one box. I have lots of boxes,
Of
and
course. Well, thank you so much for being vulnerable
yeah.
and sharing. I know that's kind of it's a subject that I know I shy away from sharing too much about just because I grew up sort of not, again, like you, not religious at all. Had some dabbling, but not really. I was sort of, that whole spiritual realm sort of scared me because like the
Mm-hmm.
dark side of it was always sort of off-putting to me.
Yeah,
And
that's scary.
so I went through sort of a spiritual awakening in my 20s, and and started experimenting with like a course in miracles and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was different than asking for help from the angels.
Mm-hmm.
And so in starting that, like opening myself up to that possibility, and just, again, much like everything else in this whole healing journey, I just tried it like you,
Mm-hmm.
and
Perfect.
said, I'm going to see what happens. And so I felt ridiculous, and especially even I couldn't speak very well. So that was another
Yeah.
kind of detriment there for a while. I would whisper to pray.
Mm-hmm.
And there are definitely times when I just immediately feel an energy just come over me, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's real. And
Mm-hmm.
I it's funny, when I'm absent-minded, I lose my keys or something, I pray to the unknown angels, and
Mm-hmm.
please help me find it. And I always find them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm calmer about it because I know they're going to help me.
Mhm.
And so whether or not, I just find them or they actually help me, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter because it still calms me down.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, in other
Yes.
words, I can think better when I'm calmer and
Yeah.
remember where was I last, or where did I put them down.
Mhm.
So just little things like that are so comforting, just to have that in the guidance. I was saying a prayer earlier to the angel of purpose for this interview so that we would have a chance to say our stories and communicate this message in such a way that was easy for people to understand and to appreciate and possibly learn from. So I it takes the responsibility of all of the weight. We sort of have this illusion that we control so much.
Mhm.
And in fact, it is just an illusion. And once you can sort of relinquish that control and say, oh, it's God and it's the angels and it's the universe conspiring for me. It's not just what I am doing. It is a
Mhm.
whole other, like, I'm just a little piece of the puzzle here. So
Mhm.
it
Yes.
almost takes the stress out
Mhm.
for me.
Oh yeah, that's such a good point to make. Yeah, I will have to ponder on that one. That's good. I
So
like that.
I know we're going kind of long in this interview, but I'm enjoying it so much. And I think that we've touched upon so many really like relatable subjects that hopefully people can learn and grow from learning how you handled it and how you've healed it.
Mm.
Um, would you have any advice for anyone just starting off on their journey with medical medium information?
Go slow. um, you can probably go a little bit faster on things like letting out no foods, depending on where you start. But be kind to yourself. Don't think you're a bad person because you can't like do it right away, all perfect. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to start. And go slow on the ingredients for basically any kind of cleanse. So, uh, yeah, I did a slow in on the heavy metal detox smoothie, and it was a very good idea because I did react, and it was important for me to know what I reacted to, so I wouldn't like overdose it. And those are the things that I think a lot of people just they think, oh, I'm going to do it now and all one do it right, and it's too stressful. And the sad thing is, a lot of people don't last it too. Like they will say, oh, I have all these symptoms that I have now suddenly after starting all this. And then you ask them, how did you start? And they go from like let's say, I don't know, a pizza McDonald's diet to, eating no foods and having, heavy metal detox smoothie and 2 liters of celery juice. Of course, they're going to have symptoms. And
That's great
what helped me the
advice. Yeah.
and it helped me the most to remind me every day, um every step I take is an important step, and I don't need to be hard on myself, and I don't need to be perfect. I just need to do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, let's leave it there because that was so perfect. And I couldn't have said it better myself. All of the things you said were just
Thank
right
you.
on. Thank you so much for being here. This has been such a great interview, and I can't thank you enough. I want to have you back to talk about the vagus nerve and all
Oh.
of the implications that can come up for not only voice but
Hmm.
nervous system stuff. You're so
Hmm.
knowledgeable. I think everybody could really benefit from learning more about that from you too.
Thank you.
So anyway, thank you so much. This was wonderful, and we'll have to catch up again.
Oh, definitely. I'm looking forward. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And yeah, I'm so glad you're going out there. Really
Oh,
happy.
and I should, and also with how can people follow you and find you?
Um, I have a Facebook page. I have a Facebook page. I have a Facebook account. You can go on www dot julie's voice.de and even get newsletter if you want. And I do also do them in English. I sometimes even do meditations in English. And yeah, um, that's probably a way you could get me. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, hopefully everybody will check you out and
Thank you.
you'll have a lot of new followers.